All right, welcome to another one of my movie reviews. I'm going to be reviewing the 2003 South Korean film called Memories of Murder. Not a lot of people have heard of this movie before, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it, my feelings on it, and just my interpretations of the movie because it's a very different type of movie. Um, like I mentioned, it's a movie that was made in South Korea in 2003. It's directed by Bong Joon Ho, and basically the premise of the movie is it takes place in 1986, and it is about the first case of a serial killer in Korea, essentially. It's a fact-based movie. It deals with three detectives, and their hunt for this serial killer who is rampaging the country, raping and killing women. So it's not a light movie to say the least. It's a very dark movie. But so I wanted to give just my overall thoughts on it. But first, I'll describe the plot a little bit. Like I mentioned, it's about South Korea's first serial killer and the case surrounding that. And it takes place in 1986, as I mentioned. So the the movie also has a political conflict going on as well regarding protests and riots in Korea as well that are the backdrop of the movie. So essentially, one of the things about this movie that really struck me when I was watching it was the detail. This movie is obsessed with detail. The details of the cases, the details of the characters, their everyday lives. It really focuses in on those things. And really, the underlying theme of this movie is obsession. These characters all go through this journey in the movie, and they all react in different ways to it. Much like the 2007 film Zodiac, which is an American film that is similar to this, but this movie's a little bit different in the sense that this movie, the people are not as smart. The two detectives that are on this case, that are on the cover here, these two, they're really in over their heads with this case. They don't know how to try and solve something like this. This is before DNA testing really came to Korea, so they're really relying on older detective-style methods, including some really questionable mystical methods, shaman-type methods. And it's actually kind of funny to watch that because they actually he believes in what he's doing, but it's not going to yield. We know in hindsight it's not going to yield any results because it's not based on the scientific method or on any type of investigative techniques that would lead you to try to find somebody. It's based on more, like I said, mysticism and gut reactions and things like that. So I mean, it's admirable that the characters try to solve the case like this, but you kind of get the sense that they were doomed from the start. They're not going to solve it. And that's really the bottom line of this movie is it posits there are some things that are just unsolvable, unknowable. You can't always find the answers that you want. Sometimes you want the person to be the serial killer when even evidence is pointing to it that they're not because you're at your limit. And this movie really explores that in the sense that the detectives this case drains them, and you can see that throughout the movie. One of them gets injured. One of them has like an existential crisis in the sense he doesn't know why he's still a detective if he can't solve this and he can't prevent these murders from happening. So it's really a lesson in futility, so to speak, with the case that they're doing. But one of the things that really struck me and how I interpreted this movie was there, like I mentioned, there's some things that you cannot know. There's some things that are just beyond the scope of our reason and our understanding. There's some cases that are just unsolvable. Like I mentioned, much like the Zodiac case in the 2007 film, this is similar in the sense that it's a case that is so extensive and has so many variables, so many conflicts within statements from witnesses. It's unsolvable. And that can be tolling for detectives that are on a case like this. So as far as like technical merits of the film, the direction is amazing. I love the direction of this movie. It's very bright. You can see clearly. It's very well lit, and the cinematography is quite breathtaking. The screenplay is great. Again, the person who directed it also wrote it. His name is Bong Joon Ho, and it was one of the I think one of the highest grossing movie in Korean history up to that point when it came out. So a lot of people really liked it over there. The reason I've heard about this was Quentin Tarantino, of all people, mentioned that this was one of his top 10 movies from the 2000s decade. And I was like, well, I love Quentin Tarantino movies. If he likes this, maybe I'll like this. And sure enough, I watched it and I loved it. And then I was able to, get it on Blu-ray. It's not really it's not easily available. It costs a lot of money on Blu-ray, but it's definitely worth it because the picture quality is amazing. Fortunately, with the special features, I don't speak Korean. The special features are not subtitled, so I can't really speak to any bonuses on it because I don't speak the language. But the whole movie otherwise is subtitled in English, and the subtitles, they're not distracting at all. They fit really well with the palette. So again, this movie it's a procedural movie. It definitely is a police procedural detective story type movie, but it deals with a lot of other things. Like I mentioned, it deals with the political climate in Korea at the time, which was going through a lot of turmoil. There was like I mentioned, there was riots continuously on the streets. There was protests, you name it. So that was pretty interesting to set this story against that and see the turmoil that the characters are facing, while at the same time the turmoil that the country is going through. So that was kind of an interesting juxtaposition, and I feel like something that doesn't get talked about a lot when people review this movie. So yeah, the movie, it's just you have to watch it. You have to see it, and you can come to your own conclusions as far as what you think the characters, what they went through. Did they do the right things? Because a lot of characters make very questionable decisions in this movie. A lot of they come to, like I said, crises of morality in this movie because they're forced to make decisions to try to solve a case. Decisions that have very serious consequences. So you get, as a viewer, you get to make up your own mind on if those characters were justified in those decisions. And at the end, I won't spoil it, but the last shot of this movie, it's one of my favorite last shots of any movie I've ever seen. It perfectly captures the entire theme of the movie. It captures the character, what the main character is going through in the movie, the lead detective. It captures the feeling that the audience has of the movie, and it also captures the feeling probably that the serial killer had. So the last shot just captures perfectly so many different things. And when you watch it, it's a beautifully framed shot, and like I said, I won't spoil it, but it's one of the best I've ever seen in any movie, and that's saying something because I've seen a lot of movies. But yeah, aside from that, if you can find it online, definitely check it out. It's worth watching, and it stays with you, this movie. You think about it long afterwards, and then after you watch it a second time, you think of different things about it, and about the characters that are in the movie. So even though it's a foreign language film, I didn't feel detached from it at all. I felt like this story it's a universal story that anybody can understand and empathize with these characters. So overall, I'd give it like a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's almost a perfect movie. Parts of it do lag just a little bit. It could have been a little bit tighter edited, and some scenes could have been taken out or trimmed up a little bit because it does lag in some parts. But other than that, I feel like this is a great movie. It's one of the best foreign films I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of foreign films. This is one of the best foreign films I've ever seen. And next to Old Boy, this is the best Korean film I've ever seen. So I highly recommend you watch it, because especially nowadays with American films, there's not a lot being made that challenge you intellectually and emotionally, and don't tell you how to feel. You have to make up your own mind about how you feel. A lot of movies today just tell you what to feel by character dialogue, just by the plot itself, by the marketing of the movie. They tell you how to feel. This movie doesn't do that. This movie just shows you, you know, I'm presenting you something. I'm showing you these characters, this situation, what they did. You make up your mind as far as how you feel and what you would do in a situation like this. So I can't speak enough more about this without giving away spoilers, but if you like crime dramas, this is definitely a film to check out. If you're okay with subtitles, again, check this film out. Subtitles are not that hard. They're not that distracting. They did a good job. They seamlessly weaved them into the story. And one other thing I forgot to mention too, this movie is funny, which you wouldn't think of when you think of a crime drama. You would think it's pretty dour. And the subject matter is serious and somber in the movie, but the movie has a lot of points where it is hysterical. And I think this is why Quentin Tarantino liked this movie, is because he mixes humor and violence very well. This movie does the exact same thing. It's not as funny as a Quentin Tarantino movie, but it is there are scenes and there are dialogue and moments where it's just so funny. And it does a good job of kind of levitating the mood a little bit, so to speak, and not leaving you completely depressed during the movie. So yeah, that's one of the other things I just forgot to mention, that I feel like it's an underappreciated part of this movie is the humor. And it's very black humor, but it's there, and if you like it, you'll like it. So anyway, check out, like I mentioned, it's called Memories of Murder, and it came out in 2003, so almost 15 years old now, but it's held up very well. All practical effects. There's no CG in this movie whatsoever. It's all filmed on location, so it looks great. Yes, so check it out, and let me know what you think if you have seen this movie down below. Thanks.